My name is Sherri Engel, and I'm with Intercoastal Realty. We have a team called the Rising Tide Team, and I have been working with David Massione for a long time, and we thought it'd be a good idea for us to sit down together and talk and share a little bit about what's going on in the market in the Wilmington and Wrightsville Beach area, and just kind of give you a little education of what we're seeing.
Hey, Sherri. I'm David Massione, the Eastern North Carolina sales manager for Town Bank Mortgage, and welcome to our offices.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled to be here.
So, Sherri, how long have you been in real estate?
I started in September of 2008.
Okay.
My first sales meeting, Jim Wallace, who owns Intercoastal, said, "I've never seen anything like it." I don't know what to tell you.
The market at the time?
At that time, that was when everything crashed.
Yeah.
And that was my first sales meeting. So I had a growing animosity for this business my first 3 years because I worked and did open houses, and I sold very little. I was also transitioning out of being a stay-at-home mom, so when I say I worked, it was a little bit of both. Okay. But then I had some life circumstances that were not a lot of fun, and I kind of had the only option but to succeed. Right. And I decided, okay, I'm going to give this a 100% for a year. If I don't get any traction, it's time for me to figure out something else. And in that year, I got some traction, and that was probably about 11, because you can remember 08 was not fun. Right. 2009, not fun. 2010, I'm literally doing the math for my sellers saying, if we don't sell today, the market's going down, you're going to have lost this much money. So it was never fun. But it was really good for me because I learned to cut my teeth with really difficult conversations in a really difficult market. But then I started with some internet leads, frankly, and they were investors. There were some people that had cash, and they knew the market was south, and it was a good time to buy, and that's how I slowly started building a business, and here I am.
Very cool. Of course, I was in Winston-Salem for 23 years before I moved here in 08, and I think we met probably in 10, because that's about when I started approaching Keith, the team you were on at the time.
Yep.
And I think I remember our first deal. I can't remember the name of the lady. It was
maybe Deborah.
Deborah.
Maybe we shouldn't say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think that was her name. Yes, absolutely. So.
And of course, let's mention Gene.
Yes, my husband, Gene, he's actually the one that dragged me into this business. So I was at a stage of life where I'm a worker bee. So I was always volunteering, whether it was at school or Bible study, church, whatever. And he used to joke, he's like, the work is steady, but the pay stinks. And I was just hungry for more, but just really didn't know what to do. And he had his license. And he said, why don't you go get your license and you can help me. Now, this is like 07-ish when I started to get... I actually started the class at the beginning of 08. So I did that, and then he actually got out of the business for a couple of years because we had to eat, and it was that bad. And I stayed in it, and he ended up coming back in the business. So we, of course, worked together, and, you know.
Well, talking about 08, I moved here in September of 08.
Oh, how about that?
Yeah,
Okay.
It was September of 08, and I remember having lunch at the Bridge Tender with an appraiser, and he pointed out to Wrightsville Beach. He said, I have no idea how long those houses are going to stay on the market. And of course, I was renting on the beach at the time, and it seemed like every other house on the beach was for sale. Yeah. I mean, just every other one. And back then, it seemed like at least half of the deals we were doing were foreclosures or short sales. And that was a lot of fun, waiting to see if you were going to get the offer. And, here's one thing that a lot of people think, because these interest rates have come up so much, they think that maybe it's another 08. And I'm here to tell you it's not. No. I mean, from our side, the lending is much, much tighter. It's just, there's no doc loans. So many people back then were able to get houses that should not have been able to get a mortgage. And that was, of course, the problem. And that is not the case now.
No, not at all. Not at all. What we would do for all that inventory now.
Oh, I know. We'd be very busy.
We would be very busy. One thing we were discussing is we are currently in a seller's market. And when 2023 started, I was telling most of my clients, I don't anticipate any market appreciation this year. How much have we seen? About 20 in 21 and 22. I mean, it was pretty remarkable how much the market has increased. And I almost thought maybe we'll have a little correction. But I pulled some numbers today, and within the last 3 months in Wilmington, the average house cost $432,000. Now, within the last month, we're at $462,000.
Wow.
So we are definitely going to see some appreciation this year. I'm not going to make a prediction how much. I still would like to set the expectation that it's going to be low, but it does look like we are still appreciating a little bit. I would love to see the 3 to 5% because that's a good, healthy market, and that's a good place to be versus when things jump so much, you feel like the market's going to have to correct at some point. But with our lack of inventory, I just don't see the correction.
How about what? I have to redefine my first-time home buyer price range. What is it anymore? You know, it used to be 175 to 250, and now can you even find a house in New Hanover County for $250,000?
That's very difficult.
Right.
Single family. I would say the average, you can probably find something between 3 and 350. Right. But the problem with that first-time home buyer is they're competing with investors, and investors have cash. Right. And they can put up some non-refundable due diligence money. Repairs don't really scare them. And these first-time home buyers, it's just difficult. You know, if they're getting an FHA loan or a VA loan, that's a tough. I sometimes ask those buyers to consider new construction.
Because the builders will balk at that contract. Because as you and I both know that because the VA and the FHA are, yes, the appraisers are required to mention repairs they might want. I, in fact, told a story about one of our clients to a person who was going to make a VA offer today. You remember you had one in Leland that I did the loan for, and the VA appraiser wanted railings built on 2 staircases. Right. And remember, the seller wouldn't do the work. They said, no, we gave you too good of a deal. So the buyer, your borrower, who happened to be an engineer, went out and built the rails herself.
Yeah, she did.
That was kind of neat.
Yeah, and she actually didn't mind because she was able to do exactly what she wanted.
Exactly.
You know, and the seller might have just thrown something up, so she did something very attractive.
I'm seeing FHA and VA being accepted more now than it was in, say, 20 or 21. But, you know, but of course it's at a much smaller scale. We're just not as busy overall.
Yes. Well, you know, if I have an FHA or a VA buyer, we can always find them a house. It sometimes just might take a little bit longer. Right. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, more and more people, I'm surprised how many people still want to stay in New Hanover County versus going out to Brunswick County, you know, and literally every house in the last 3 months that I've done a loan on, they all went in over ask, every single one.
Typically, that's if it is a property that has been properly prepared for market and it's clean as a whistle and staged well, decluttered, you know, lawns taken care of, and in a sought-after location, you're going to absolutely see multiple offers.
And the prices per square, I did one in Carolina Place last month, and it was 750 square foot house sold for $321,000, and it appraised.
And it appraised.
Yeah. It appraised.
Yeah. You know, I haven't seen an issue with appraisals in the last year.
I just had one with someone you know quite well, but it came in about 11,000 short. But that's exactly where the agent told the people where it was going to come in. I mean, they intended to overpay.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
So they just wanted it.
They wanted
care.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how I think our appraisals ended up catching up once there were enough people that said, I don't care if it appraises or not. I want this house.
Yeah, the only problem, I mean, there are people right now who would overpay if they had the money to pay the difference. Because as you know, you've got to put the 5% down minimum, let's say, on a conventional loan. And if it doesn't appraise, you've got to put that difference down. Yes. So there are people who would do it. They just don't have the money. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are doing that, you know.
Yeah. I had a family, I think it was last year, where we had an appraisal issue. And so they debated on not buying the house. And so we kind of did the math. They were going to have to bring about $20,000 to the table. And we did the math of, okay, well, if you go find a rental, because at this point we're not going to be able to find a house, you find a rental, you're going to pay at the minimum probably $2,500 a month. Wow. In rent, they had 3 children and 2 dogs. You know, you're going to need a decent-sized house. And by the time you do that times 12, would you be better off just going ahead and buying this house in this nice neighborhood in this nice school district? So that's how we decided that was the best decision to do it. But, you know, we had to really weigh it because it was a kind of a punch in the gut.
My next door neighbor, he moved to Cary, and I had done the refinance for him on the house next door, and he decided to keep the house, and I think it's off Holly Tree on Warlick Drive, and I think he's getting like $3,600 a month rent. Yeah,
rents are pretty amazing right now. Let's talk about interest rates because
Sure.
Whenever the market first, when the rates started going up last year, it was July of last year, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, July of 2022, they started going up. So that's when our pool of buyers really started to slow down. And I feel like we definitely don't have the pool of buyers we did, but we still have plenty. There's still plenty of them out there.
Well, what I've been telling people on the other blog that we do, that Tyler and I do together, people, everybody asks me, well, should I wait for interest rates? And I tell them there's a group of people who are going to wait. And so what you're going to have, if rates go, say, to the low fives or the high fours, you're going to have this another rush. Mm-hmm. So you're going to be competing against all those folks. And, what I tell people is if interest rates continue to go up, you're going to be happy you bought now. If rates go down, you're going to get a chance to refinance. So, I just tell them, people, go buy a house. If you need a house, go buy a house, if you can find one.
Well, I think that's the best advice, because I do believe that now is the best time to buy, because I only see, with our current environment, prices inching up every year. So if you can buy today and then refi when they go back down, great. And if not, you've got your family in a house and you're still building equity.
The first mortgage I ever gave someone in 1985 was 13%. But it was a $60,000 loan.
Oh, yeah. See, that's the difference today, is the prices are so high. And even though interest rates are, within, they're probably relatively low compared to how they've been at some.
Other than the last 14 years.
Yes, yeah.
So you go prior to 2008, these rates are at the low end of the range.
Yeah, yeah. When do you see them, in your crystal ball, inching back down?
Well, we know that the Fed did not raise rates the other day. We know that Jerome Powell has been giving testimony saying that this is just a pause, pretty much. He said that, in fact, I heard him say that they had to get there very quickly. They needed to get from point A to point B very quickly because they knew that inflation was getting out of control. Mm-hmm. And now that he talked about being a sports car versus just like a station wagon. Now he needs to he wants to get to a certain point, but he's just going to do it much slower. And I think really what he wants to do is see some data. Because usually Fed rate hikes take to fully kick in up to 18 months. So we have not even begun to feel all the, and not in housing. In housing we have, obviously, because rates went up quickly. But, in other aspects of the economy, how it's going to be impacted. Like car loan, like everything costs more now.
Everything costs more. I was listening to some, I want to say radio station, but it probably was XM.
Okay.
What is it? Is
Siri?
it Siri?
Siri?
I don't even know. I just
Sirius?
get in my car and it goes Sirius XM. And they were talking about gas prices in California, and they are high. It's like $4.50-ish.
I was in California 2 years in September. We were in San Francisco, and we were paying over $6 a gallon. We rented.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So they've been higher than.
Oh, I mean, they're down now, but they were much higher. Yeah. And that's the problem. I mean, we have so many different things. What impacts interest rates specifically is inflation. That's the Fed's job, is to fight inflation and keep employment high. And so, Tyler and I talked about it all the time. I know that I was waiting to see when inflation was actually going to happen, because interest rates were almost at 0% for 14 years. That's a huge creation of money. Yes. But it was all the money giveaways during COVID that I think put it over the top.
I think so too.
And for the fact the Fed said that inflation was going to be transitory, that was I laughed when I heard that. I mean, these people are supposed to be smarter than me. It's their job, and you just knew it was coming. Yeah. My measure of inflation was a bag of onions that I've been buying at Harris Teeter for 14 years that were $1.29 forever. Mm-hmm. And now they're over $3.
Yeah. That's at the grocery store. My husband does most of the grocery shopping.
I love to shop.
And I went in there one day and I called him and said, "Do you know how expensive eggs are? Do you know?" He's like, "Yes."
Yeah.
But if you don't do it on a regular basis, you don't quite realize how expensive everything has gotten.
Yeah. So, I mean, here's what I think. I think that the Fed is getting close to being done. The Fed usually in the past, now we haven't seen this in over 15 years, when the Fed is close to being done, usually is when long rates start to come down. Okay. They'll anticipate the slowdown that's going to come. The Fed has said they want to get the unemployment rate up to 5%. They're worried about wages getting out of control. And I know that seems kind of weird because, rising wages should be good for people, but it's not good for inflation. So, we're getting close to the end of the bond sell-off, but there's probably a little bit more pain
coming.
Yeah. I hope it's all over by spring,
Of 24.
Yes, because all these rate hikes that they've just done over the last year will be fully in effect.
Okay. So do you anticipate rates getting to the 5s in 23?
I think maybe even into the 4s.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well,
okay.
I mean, that's, the bottom line is what we're not going to do is see rates go lower than the previous low.
Oh,
and,
sure.
and that's always what we've seen for the 40, well, I've been in the business 38 years, but so I got in before the peak. And what you've seen every couple years, rates would go down and make a new low compared to 2 or 3 years before. Then when they made a new high, when they went higher, they would not go higher than the previous high. So you've had this stair step down, and that's the definition of a trend. I mean, you can drive lines across the charts, and it's just straight down. But now this is going to be the first. It is the first higher high.
Okay.
So now we've broken that pattern up, and it will be the first higher low. We will not take out the lows of 2020.
No.
But even then, if we go to 4.5, I mean, that's still 2% above where it was and 2% below where we are now.
And how much money that would save some of these homeowners.
A lot of people.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I think is important for young people to consider is one of my concerns as we move 5-10 years from where we are today is what a privilege it will be to be a homeowner. I'm concerned there's a lot of build to rent communities that we're starting to see in our little town, and
Trey talked about that Tuesday at sales meeting.
Yes, and we've got apartments right behind us, where we're sitting, and it's they pay a lot in these rents. I mean, I know they're high dollar or high end apartments, but I also know that if you bought a house for $350, you let a couple of years go by, and you're starting to have more net worth than the average renter.
And you hopefully have a 3% interest rate.
Oh yeah. Well, that's another thing that's been interesting that I was really concerned about is if you have a 3% interest rate, why are you going to move? Why would you not just add on to your house or do something different? And I think that's going to be the case for a lot of folks, but I'll tell you what, life still happens. And sometimes people get promoted. Unfortunately, someone could pass away. A mother could get sick elsewhere, and you've got to move up to help her.
An unexpected child.
An unexpected child, a divorce. I mean, what I'm seeing with a lot of my sellers right now is just they've had life transitions, and they've got to do something different. And so, therefore, they need to sell.
I like to use my children as examples. And some of it has to do with the data that we're looking at here. And the data that I'm about to give you is about a little older. But at the time, in 2008, and this was from a guy named Barry Habib, who's a big interest rate guru kind of person. And he said that in 2008, there were 4 million houses on the market. Okay. And then he pointed to the fact that there was a mini baby boom from 1990 to 1995. So now, a year ago, and it's about the same now, we have just a little over 1 million houses on the market, yet there's 14 million new households. So my two older kids were born in the 80s, late 80s, and they both own homes. And my two younger children will buy homes, but they were born in 1991 and 1995. Mm-hmm. So they're still going to buy. And what's interesting is my older two children both live in the same neighborhood outside of Raleigh. It's called New Hill. And they're both going to end up buying. I refinanced both of them to somewhere around 3, mm-hmm. and my son. He's got a very good job. His wife stays home, but they have an extra child. They thought they were going to have 2, and now they have 3.
Uh-huh.
And my daughter, when she built, because it was their first house, and it was quite a first house, and they really just need another bathroom because my 2 granddaughters are going to be fighting over the one bathroom in the hallway very soon.
They'll be okay. But that's another funny thing, just talking about trends, because we believe now everyone needs to have their own bathroom. And I remember showing a house to a couple, and they were buying it for the daughter and her friends, and there were 3 bedrooms and 1.5 baths. Because that's what they did in the 50s and the 60s. Yeah. There was one bathroom where everyone could shower, and then there were, the master always had a half bath. And they were like hyperventilating, just the thought of everyone having to use the same shower.
I mean, you could think about my daughter, I know that her house, she bought it in 2016, I think, and it was a Ryan home, a tract builder out, and it's in a very nice neighborhood where the other side of the neighborhood ended up becoming $1 million homes because there's just nowhere to go up there. And so I think she's probably doubled the value of her home. So she's got, maybe you have that incredible equity and you use it to make an investment to offset the higher mortgage payment.
Sure, absolutely.
Or you rent the house out and use the higher rent to offset the mortgage payment on the new property. Yes. But they're definitely both going to move.
Yes. Well, and that's where there's always going to be a market, even with what we're dealing with now. There's always a market because life changes and things have to.
And eventually all this new construction, especially like in Brunswick County, they will become resales.
Sure.
And that's what'll happen. Maybe if it takes us a year and a half or 2 years for rates to get to the lows we're talking about, well, those people might say, well, gee, maybe I need to go buy another house now because rates are low, and then we'll have some more inventory, hopefully.
Yes.
But people will just continue to flock to Wilmington.
I think so. That's going to be something that is going to continue to trend. Tell us what you have right there.
Yeah, let's talk about this. This was from today. Well, this actually was just some interesting numbers Tyler put together for me that, basically before 2020 and now, so the year before and after the big rush. So in New Hanover County, new listings are down 44% from 2019. Yet home prices are up 63%, and the overall inventory is down 68% from 2019. And you and I we wouldn't need to see this to know that. We know it. We can just feel it. There's very few houses, And then some other data that was from today. Today was existing home sales. They were up a minor gain of 0.2, and I think they were expected to be down. But sales are down overall 20.4% from a year ago. The inventory of unsold existing homes grew 3.8% there's a million existing homes on the market, but that's a 3-month supply, which is very, very low.
Very low.
Yeah, I mean, what would be an average?
5 to 6. Yeah. 5 to 6 months is a healthy market where it's not really a buyer's market, it's not really a seller's market.
Right. So Tyler looked up some other data, and 2 million would be a normal market, which I just talked about.
Is this national?
Yeah, national. This is NAR.
So just so you know that Wilmington, the last time I checked, it was the end of first quarter, we had like 1.6 months supply.
Wow.
Or maybe 1.3. It was somewhere in there. Over $1 million, we had probably the most inventory. But, man, golly, those lower price points, it's all but,
Well, it's
very,
amazing.
very little.
I'm sorry. It's amazing now to me when I pre-approve someone, very often they're not out looking at houses. They're waiting for the realtor to call them and say, okay, another house just came on the market. Let's go look at it. They're not just out touring and having all these houses to look at.
No. Well, what I've had to do is, I have someone coming into town on Saturday. So I've taken the first part of the week and I'm putting things together of what I may show them. By Friday, I'm actually seeing what's still left and what new has come on. And then Saturday, I meet with them typically in the office, and then we get on the computer and see what has changed that night. And then we go from there because it has changed so dramatically. It's just really amazing because you used to be able to plan and stick with your plan, and you just had to learn to pivot quickly.
What's amazing to me is when I'm sitting in the intercoastal sales meetings and you're doing the new listings, and even the 2 million, everything's moving. 2 million, 3 million. I had a friend of mine put his house on the market, and I just happened to call him. It was in landfall, and I called him the day he did it. Randomly, and he said he already had 5 offers on the table on day one, and another realtor had called the listing agent and begged them not to choose one until they got an offer in front of them. So 6 offers on day one on a $2 million house. Now, 5 years ago, that house is going to sit for some time.
Yeah, you're going to have to look at the absorption rate and let the seller prepare the seller. It takes about 6 months, 9 months, whatever the case is for this type of property to move. So.
This last little piece of data I thought you would find interesting, and Tyler has been giving me all this information. The South continued its dominance in all 4 regions as it represents 56% of all housing starts and housing completions, as well as 55% of all building permits.
Yeah.
People are moving south.
Yes.
They have been for a while.
They have been for a while, but they keep on coming, and I think it's a great thing. I mean, Wilmington has absolutely been discovered, and I'm thankful for it. But I knew we were going to grow before COVID, but it just really took a fast forward through the pandemic. A few folks honestly have moved out. I think COVID was a great reshuffling of America and America's wealth, but some folks moved, and then again, family. There was always something that I've had some folks have to go back to wherever they moved from.
Yeah, I've seen that. We've actually had some early prepayments. People moved, got a mortgage, and we get notified if the loan pays off within 6 months. And several people just quickly turned around and went home.
How about
Well, that's
that?
not very common, though.
Okay.
It's just we've just had a little rash of that happening.
Recently. Okay. All right. Well, I think we ought to wrap it up just so we can we're just kind of at we're newbies at this, or at least I am. We're just getting this started, but we want to ideally talk about once a month about the market, what's going on with interest rates, and just kind of help educate people about what's going on in Wilmington and
Sure.
Riceville Beach, and really I would say Pender, Brunswick, New Hanover County, and some Onslow. I do a little in Onslow, but that's mainly the area that we service around here.
That's what we do mostly. I see that's almost those 3 counties exclusively. But you're right, a little bit of Onslow County. Some people get up there. You can still find an inexpensive house up in Jacksonville.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, under 200,000. And they move quick up there as well. But I think this was a great episode 1. Episode 1 of, we'll come up with a name for the next one.
There you go. That's right. That's right. All right. Well, hey, Tyler's behind the scenes, but we appreciate you.
Yes,
Thanks
thank
so
you,
much.
Tyler.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I guess we'll see you in a month.
Okay, sounds great.
Thanks,
All
Sherri.
right, thank you.